Hi, this is Charlie Mato-Toyela with Blue Bear Flutes. Of course, if you haven't seen our website, bluebearflutes.com, that's our website, bluebearflutes.com. I've had so many people over the years, and even just recently I've replied to a couple of people that say, where can I buy your flutes? And I know the videos that they see and ask this question on is one where I start with, Charlie from bluebearflutes.com, and then I end with Charlie from bluebearflutes.com. And somewhere in the middle of the video, I've kind of trained myself to say bluebearflutes.com a couple of times. But anyway, you can find our Instagram at bluebearflutes. You can find our Facebook, Twitter, TikTok on occasion. Whatever we got going on is usually bluebearflutes.com. I will admit, over the years, even after trademarking our business and our brand, and also copywriting our logos and whatever else we've done, I've seen countless other Blue Bear things pop up. I've actually seen Blue Bear Arts recently popped up, and I've asked my attorney if I should bother cease and desisting anybody. He's like, no, and I'm kind of wondering why I paid all those thousands of dollars to trademark my stuff. But anyway, that's me rambling. Let's see. Today I've got 5 ridiculous things that I've been asked. I'd love to say over the years, but honestly, I think I've gotten these same questions in the last week. And I get them about every week. I mean, it's just part of the deal. And I don't mean to be calling you out if you just subscribe to my channel and you see your question in here. I'm so sorry. After all the times that I've been asked, I don't know what else to call it other than ridiculous. Maybe it's just less than appropriate or unnecessary or not a thoughtful question. I was telling my wife before we decided to do this video, I want to be polite because I don't want to leave a bad impression on anybody, not people that are just seeing me or what have you. But at the same time, I want to be straight and to the point. And if I answered your questions, and yes, a lot of times it's either me or my wife, who's trying not to laugh holding the camera, that answers your questions when you email. And I want you to email, I really do. But if I answer your questions at the same level that the question is that I was asked, you probably wouldn't tolerate it. You really wouldn't. I mean, if I were a customer, then I'd be upset if you gave me the stupid answer that some of these questions may deserve. And it's not really a stupid answer. It's just, you'll see where I'm going with this. Anyway, the first ridiculous thing is, I have small hands, but I want to play a low-tone flute. Now, there's a lot to unpack there. The reason that you want to play a low-tone flute is because that's what all the other flute players are playing, right? It's what you heard in the movies, right? So historically, Native Americans didn't really make low-tone flutes. And any of you that disbelieve that or what have you, before you just hang up and think this guy doesn't know what he's talking about, I've been doing this for 37 years of my life, and it's been kind of an important part of my life. So I've done a lot of research. I've seen a lot of flutes, both historical, modern, and what have you. You can do the research. Historically, we didn't make low-tone flutes. Typically, we made higher-tone flutes, and it's kind of natural because of the materials that we had to use and what have you. We also didn't make flutes out of deforested hardwoods, which is kind of one of my pet peeves. If you want it to sound like a Native American flute, it should be made out of things that Native American flutes were made out of, right? You don't think about that, do you? If you want it to look like a Native American flute, should it have 10 coats of lacquer on it? Laser engraved etchings? I mean, I started burning my bear symbol into the back of the flute a while back because people kept asking me to sign it. I'm like, okay, I'll sign it there. That's my signature. I've still had one recently demand that I put more than that on it. And I humored them because they're a long-time customer, but it's not, that's my signature, is that bear. Anyway, so the problem with having small hands and want to play a low-tone flute is because the size of the flute that you're going to have to play to make a low tone out of is going to have, very spaced apart holes and what have you. I have actually been kind of fiddling with some flute patterns and what have you, and made it to where people with smaller hands can play lower tone flutes, but it's like I want to drive a Lamborghini, but I make very little money, And I'm not talking about the financial aspect of the flute either. I'm talking about the realism of having small hands and not being able to put them around a large flute or space your fingers that far apart to be able to play it. there's some things you got to think about. And I know that if you're new to flutes and what have you, you think you want to play this low tone flute because that's what you've heard, even though they're not historically correct. Anyway, get back to reality. That's what a lot of us really need to do, is go play that small flute and see if you don't like it. I actually had somebody gasp today that's seen a video of me playing a tiny flute, and it was kind of a nice thing. You know, I get to feel good about something that goes beyond just hearing people like the way I play. The fact that they liked a small tone, high tone flute is really important to me. What key, number 2, ridiculous things, what key is the traditionally tuned flute in? This is actually kind of a two-parter. Or, how low can I get a little people flute? I've had those questions. I haven't made traditionally tuned flutes in a while because most people don't understand the concept of what that is. A traditionally tuned flute is not a flute that is tuned to a traditional scale. That's not it. Minor pentatonic is kind of what flutes were historically, regardless of those people that cover the third fingering on their flute and think they know what they're talking about. Regardless of that, most flutes were historically across the world minor pentatonic, except for a couple of people who lived out in the desert, and really they probably started off this way. But minor pentatonic doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be a perfect key of A. Most of you know about A432 or A440 or A528, which is actually C528 or A444. But anyway, if you know about all these things, an A could be a variety of different tones. What's important is that the spacing between the notes represents a minor pentatonic scale. So historically, natives didn't use tuners, and because of that, our flutes turned out all kinds of different scales, and we didn't care what key they were in. And when I made, in the past, traditionally tuned flutes, we typically tuned them that way. We knew that they were in the same size variety of a historical flute, and that the fingerings were placed in the same place as a historical flute, and they were tuned by ear to sound good, but not looking at the scale or figuring out what key they were in or how perfectly 440 or whatever they were. That's not traditionally tuned. And likewise, and really the last ridiculous question could have included this second half of it: how low can I get a little people flute? So a little people flute's about this long. It's like 10 inches or something, and you can only make a certain tone with so much material. So there again, it takes a big piece of material to make a low tone flute, and little people flutes can't support that. So there again, I guess it kind of goes along with this second question. It's a conceptual idea. A little people flute is made to the size of what a Cherokee little people flute would have been or could have been played by Cherokee little people. And then all you Choctaws and Chickasaws out there, I'm not claiming little people just for myself. It's just kind of how we put it together. Little people were like another race of people that lived with native people and lived with a lot of people around the world, and somehow or another somebody took their eraser to the part of the history books that had them in them. And anyway, I'm not here to talk about them today, but if I make a flute that's 10 inches long and big around as my index finger, it's only going to make a certain variety of tones. And also, can I play the flute if I'm, number 3, ridiculous things that people ask, and this one a lot of you are going to probably shrug and scratch your head over. Can I play the flute if I'm not a Native American? If I relied on selling flutes to Native Americans who were interested in playing the flute, I would have sold about 10 in my whole life, and I would have never sold another one. So I'm not telling you it's about money or about me selling flutes. I'm just telling you my business is making Native American flutes. And anyway, why should you not? I've got a Turkish flute at home that a friend of mine gave me, and I've thought about making some of them because they're kind of cool. Not for sale, but am I allowed to call it a Turkish flute if I'm not Turkish? So there's a lot of people out there that have to sell flutes under the name, or someone in my particular situation would even say the misnomer of calling theirs Native American style flutes. Well, that would suggest that I have to call my Turkish flute that I made a Turkish style flute, or my Chinese flute that I've made a Chinese style flute. And you don't have to do that. The only people in the world you have to do that with, and only apparently in this country, because there's a lot of Native American flutes from all over the place that aren't from this country, that aren't being made by Native Americans. But the only country you have to do that in is the United States. And it has to do with the law called the Indian Arts and Crafts Act, which is supposed to protect Native Americans from people copying our culture. But I find that, like any law, it's being exploited by people who either are native and sell Chinese flutes, Chinese-made flutes as Native American made, or exploited by people who want to stop a particular tribe from existing because, for whatever reason, they're on some kind of power trip like that. And if stopping that tribe from existing isn't within their reach, they want to stop an individual who's a member of that tribe from existing. And in some of our cases, they think that's more attainable than stopping the tribe. But more on that to come. There's some good things we've got planned to show you guys. But anyway, so yeah, of course you can play a Native American flute. That would suggest that I couldn't play a silver transverse flute because an Italian invented it. That's just a silly notion. But I've got an example of this. Other than people who've asked me that same question, I've got an example of this I read on Reddit the other day. I was on a friend's Reddit, who's like one of the biggest Native American Reddits that there is. And somebody asked on there, I found this necklace, or somebody gave me this necklace. How do I go about returning it to the tribe that it belongs to? And there again, there's a lot to unpack there. This person has got like Stockholm syndrome or something, you know, and I know that may seem like I'm not using that word appropriately, but there's other people that I know that have the same problem, that just feel the absolute necessity to display their obedience to whatever. I don't know, maybe it's to God or something, but some people do it for their governments. Some people do it for other people's governments, which is kind of silly to me. You know, why should you be obedient to my government if you're from another country? But whatever. But then people do it towards other people now too. There's a word for it, and I'm going to use this word. And just because I use it doesn't suggest that I'm of one political party or another. But it's called virtue signaling. And it's so sad in so many ways, because the person on the one hand believes that they're doing something right, but on the other hand, they have a psychological problem. And I say that because the necklace that this person wanted to return to a tribe would have insulted any tribe that they turned it over to. It was like a dollar store beaded necklace with a little cheap, you know, imported metal turtle stamp on it or something, you know, and it was such a sad thing to have to see that and have to, you know, I almost wish that I'd either been born 100 years ago or 100 years from now, not to have to deal with parts of the world that are going on right now. It's just, and there are some bad things. We could talk about some bad things going on in the world. This doesn't even scratch the problems in the world, but it is a problem in the world. If you notice the camera jumping up and down. That dollar store necklace that this person wanted to return to its appropriate tribe, just, I mean, it's so insulting. I'm sorry. You know, most of you know that I'm something of an omniglot. I speak a lot of languages, but all I can think about is using bad English right now. That's just, that, there are some very profane things running through my mind. Let's just say that. Number 4 of the most ridiculous questions I've been asked or heard. This is one that I get pretty regularly, and I don't want to insult any of my new customers or subscribers. I don't want to insult you, but I'm going to try to be quick because I'm already going way over my time limit on this video. But this one, you really need to think about something, and the reason I talk so much is to try to provoke all of you for thinking, and the ones who don't like to think are the ones that don't like to hear me talk. So the rest of you, thank you very much. And those that don't like to hear me talk, go ahead and do whatever you got to do. It's an interaction. It helps my analytics. I don't care what you do. You've already watched the video. Too late. Anyway, I place my order. This is specific to Blue Bear Flutes. I place my order, bluebearflutes.com, and I need it day after tomorrow. What? Well, did you think about placing it last week or the week before last? I need it day after tomorrow. Did you know that you were going to need it day after tomorrow? Most of the time I hear yes, I do. I knew that I needed it like a month ago. Why didn't you buy it a month ago? Then that would have ensured that you got it after tomorrow. You know, as humans, we procrastinate. We procrastinate a lot. I'm adding those two words together. And I do. It looks like I procrastinate a lot. It's because, like those people asking this question who needed it day after tomorrow, I have a lot of things going on in my life. Now, they may perceive that they have a lot of things going on in their life. And if I explained one day of my life to them, they may lay down on the floor and cry just for having to know that it exists. And I'm not saying my day is more important than any of yours either. You know, we can toil at nothing and waste our time at nothing and do that all day long and take a lot of our time. But yeah, you need to think about these things before you place your order. For one, ask me, if I order a flute today, can I get it after tomorrow? And I'm going to say no. I can try to get it to you a couple of days after that, but not day after tomorrow. It's just not going to happen, especially when somebody asks this question on a Saturday. I've had this question in the last month on a Saturday. They wanted it on Monday. I don't know what planet they're from. Maybe they should have Mr. Bean deliver this flute for them or something. I don't know, but you know, maybe if I had my own personal spacecraft, I could deliver it to them by hand, or my jet. You know, I just fly it over there. I've done that kind of thing, but I don't want to do that. That's crazy talk. Here's the other half of that one is I haven't received a shipping confirmation yet, and we're talking like day 3 or day 5. So just to break it down, and the thing that I was afraid was going to take so long explaining, if I shipped all of the orders that I have right now, if I started shipping them right now, it would take me to the end of the week to get done shipping them, even if they were already made. And we have a system. We actually have quite an advanced system. In my youth, I studied people like Henry Ford. I studied some of the great inventors, and I really looked at the way things were made, not because I wanted to reproduce what they made, but I was curious about the process, and I've learned. And the only way something can be shipped out like in 1, 2, or 3 days, and other flute makers, you know, any of you that are watching, if you want to comment below, feel free to. I am open to discussion on this one. The only way that something like that could be shipped is if you have it in hand, and the only way you could ship the quantity of flutes that we do and have that many quantities of those flutes on hand is if you had a warehouse the size of a Walmart with at least 100 of each of them, hoping that you could second guess what your orders were going to be like. So what we do in my shop, oh, and there's one other part of that too. If a flute sits on the shelf for a year, 6 months, 3 months, let's say a month, if it sat on the shelf for a month and didn't get maintained, upkept, taken care of, it's going to look like crap when it's time to ship it out. It is. And some of you big flute making companies out there that might be struggling right now keeping up with your customers, you know, if you haven't figured a system out already, just look. People need to know that handmade things take time, that we're not a giant corporate entity. That doesn't mean I'm not a corporation. I mean like a big, you know, 100-story building packed full of, you know, thousands of employees doing this and doing that, whatever menial task. If we're not that kind of business, or some giant importer in the U.S. who imports flutes for one guy and then they ship them to him and he ships them back to him with his signature on them and then they sell them as name. Anyway, if we're not that kind of business, how could we do that? How is it possible? It's not possible. We'd have to have that giant warehouse the size of a Walmart or a Costco or whatever giant store you have in your neighborhood. We'd have to have a warehouse that size full of the whim of what we might think people would buy, which is a great deal of inventory to keep up with and maintain. Like I say, after a month, a flute that's not being played or oiled or waxed or rubbed or picked up and looked at or whatever, there's going to be some problems. So you may as well just go ahead and make that flute again. Likewise, what we do in our shop, and I haven't really discussed it in great detail, and maybe one day I will, but on another video that's not going to waste your time wondering what these 5 things are. I've got to get to number 5 here. We keep blanks in our shop, and not a plethora of them. We have maybe 100 of this one, or maybe 20 of that one, or 5 of this. It's based on how many we usually sell, but guess what? If all of those blanks sell out and we've been working on somebody's wholesale order for a minute, it's going to wait a minute. So that's why our shipping times have been this many to this many weeks. Could go over, could be quicker, and be happy when it's quicker. And if it goes over, no, I haven't forgotten about you. And if you have any questions or doubt, feel free to email me. I get that question, obviously. Number 5, the last one of the most ridiculous 5 things that I get questions about. I also get questions about this one regularly. Any of you who watched my birthday video, which people are still commenting on today and wishing me happy birthday, even though it was back in May, and I appreciate you greatly, all of you, and I'm not ever going to be mad or mean or upset about that. I appreciate your consideration. Any of you who watched that video that was my birthday, May 25th of 2023, if you haven't yet, you should. You know that I have enemies in the world. I didn't choose them to be my enemies. They chose to be my enemies. And I'm not a bad, mean, bad person. You know, I'm not like this ruthless guy. In my youth, I was very judgmental of people. But that guy has been gone for a long time. Although I see him echoing in the lives of these judgmental people that have attacked me countless times. And there's 2 groups of them. One of them is a flute group, and the other one is a group of people that may be or may not be Native Americans, but they pretend they are. Those people, the Native American group, are the loudest ones, the most violent ones, the most problematic ones. They have threatened the lives of friends of mine. Their problem. They're trying to dismantle Native Americans all over the United States, and one of them actually lives out of the country. They're trying to dismantle what Native American is, and it can only be this or this. It can't be all the rest of us who are Native American. It can only be this person or that person. And, you know, there's reasons that they want to do that, and I won't get into it on this video. I may talk about it in another one. And I've actually got a nice video that may help a lot of you that have ever been attacked or told by somebody that you're not Indian if you are. I've got a nice video coming up about that may help you out. But those enemies, they actually try to infiltrate lots of groups of Native people, lots of them. And they're very busy at what they do. They look up stuff and try to dig up dirt on everybody. They're probably some of the worst people in the world. They're some of the saddest people in the world that I know of. And then I've got a group of people that are flute enthusiasts. Look, I just put y'all down. Flute enthusiasts. Some of them professional flute players, and some of them professional flute makers, but most of them are players. The makers don't get as pissed off at me as they used to. Anyway, I would not want to offer those people to come to my shop. So for that reason, I do a lot of things to keep that from happening. And I live in Alabama. We have a lot of really neat rules, like something about a castle and a stange or something or another. I can't remember what it is, but we have a lot of really neat rules here in our state. And I love the state. It's a great place. It's actually one of the last states, one of the last 3 or 4 states that free southeastern Indians lived in before the removal and what came along with that. And also, a lot of them still live here, of course. But anyway, people ask me all the time, can I come to your shop and pick out my flute? Now, logically, no, you can't. But people ask me that thinking that I have just tons of finished flutes laying around my shop. And to me, that's just insane. I wish I had tons of flutes finished laying around my shop. But then again, I don't either. You know, there's only a certain size that I really want my business to be. I want it to be profitable and good for my family and good for people especially. I mean, you guys are the reason that I make these flutes. It's not for myself. I could have went into countless other businesses that wouldn't have given me the stress or the enemies. And I could have been quiet and sat on my hands for the rest of my life, but I didn't. I wanted to share how to make flutes and how to play flutes with the world, and here we are talking about that on a pile of giant river cane that I cut at a friend's place today. But coming to my shop would be a bad thing. Number one, have you ever emailed Bill Gates and asked him if you could come pick out your computer? Have you ever asked Jeff Bezos if you could come over and find your IKEA that you want to have shipped to your house and then carry it home with you? Before he passed on, and of course, rest their souls if the other two pass on before you see this video, but before Sam Walton passed on, did you ever think to yourself, hey Sam, can I get a box of Great Value macaroni and cheese? I want you to pick out a box for me. And I'm not saying I'm as big as these guys. Of course, you know, it's my goal to like I said, you know, have a profitable business, because allowing me to do what I do allows you to receive what you get at the price that you get it at, which I try to be really good on. But at the same time, coming to my shop and picking out a flute would be just impossible, because if there is and I've said this to customers over the phone countless times, if there's a finished flute in my shop, it's in a box with somebody else's name on it right now, and it's waiting to be shipped to their house. If you come to my shop and you wanted to see a flute that was in the process of being finished, you know, I would have to stop what I'm doing and take my time to do that, and then it would take that time away from the customers who've already bought and paid for their flutes. We try not to waste any time in the shop, and I know to some people, if they watched me every day, they would think that I was wasting a lot of time, because I answer a lot of phone calls from people at my 800 number. I oftentimes call people back. I'm scheduling appointments for other things that I have going on in my life. I'm working on this project or that project, trying to get it solved and finished, and talking to this official or that official, or writing letters to, you know, governors sometimes, or sometimes speeches or videos, trying to plan out what we're doing, getting a new tool set up in the shop. That takes a lot of time, and repairing old tools in the shop that are on their way down or needing help. There's a lot of that kind of stuff I do, and I do, let's see, I'm thinking politically correct here. I do follow up with a lot of those people who call me, who I know are on that first list we talked about. I follow up with a lot of them. Some of them have unique positions in the world, jobs that they do, and I contact them and email them and make sure that I've given them everything they needed. Like I said, I wish I didn't have to be so tongue-in-cheek about that. I could just tell you straight out, and maybe I will one day. I told you a lot in that birthday video, but I didn't tell you everything. My gosh, there's been a lot of stuff I've learned in the last 4 months. But I do have some other things to share about it, and if you ever heard that your family was Indian, you might want to watch one of the next videos that's coming out. It'll be appropriately titled, so you'll see what's going on. Anyway, I hope that this video finds you all well. I hope you've gotten some comedy out of it. I hope I've helped answer some questions, and maybe you'll never ask me these stupid questions again. But if you do, I'm still going to answer them, and I'm going to be a nice guy about it. Sometimes I'm going to be a little, you know, when I have an engineer call me and they can't figure out how to pair their microphone, that has happened so many times, and it didn't even make it to the list. But oh my gosh, a technical engineer, an electronics engineer, I think I've had 3 of them call me and say, I can't pair your microphone with the amp. And I'm like, and really what they say is, I can't pair the Bluetooth mic with the amp. I'm like, the mic's not Bluetooth, it's UHF. It says in the instructions, I've got countless videos about it, but some reason or another, it's like right over their head. And the last one, she tolerated me for a while. She got the comedy in my replies, because, like I said, you know, when you see things from multiple points of view, you have opportunities, and sometimes I have to make myself laugh. It keeps me from going crazy. I hope you guys are doing well. Take care. Thanks so much for watching this video and sticking through whatever length of time it turned out to be. I know it was quite long for 5 ridiculous things, but you needed to hear all these and everything in between. Make sure if you have any questions or you want to buy a Native American flute, you go to bluebearflutes.com. If you can't find them on bluebearflutes.com, you can find them on instagram.com/bluebearflutes. And just about every other platform, it's the same. So thanks again. Charlie Mato-Toyela signing out for Blue Bear Flutes and bluebearflutes.com. I hope to see you again very soon.